Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Solo ReacTalk. This evening, I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K, episode 27, Saint Lazarus, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out my previous reactions to the other episodes, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Yes, episode 26. What was it called again? Renegade Destinies. Tarweiler. He should have died in episode 26. He should have died in episode 26 if it weren't for the Astra Militarum forces and a commissar, who followed Saint Gaxian? Yes, Saint Gaxian, yes. If it weren't for them, defeating or pushing back the clone troopers that were, should I say contaminated by the influence of the Chaos Gods, if they weren't able to push them back, then Tarweiler should have died in episode 26. But he survived, so we'll see him again. We also got to see Anakin and Iskander. They had to do some really messy things to try and escape and, try to collect Iskander's armor or weapons. And yeah, they had to kill a lot of blanks in very, very bloody, very messy, gory manners, just killing them is not enough. You need to destroy the body. So yeah, it was a very messy time there. And then we also got to see Nerva as she was, connecting herself into the Imperial Knight, and she got to experience memories of the past, especially about the first pilot of this Imperial Knight. Before it used to be called a Sentinel, so yeah, that was also quite interesting. And she got to experience those memories, and she's been trying to activate this machine without going through due process. And the memories of the past have been advising her or warning her not to do something like this, or else it will lead to her death. But she is resolute, she is determined. She wants to activate this machine. She wants to pilot it as soon as possible, and she's going to take the risk. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens on that storyline. Hopefully it will come out here in 27, maybe. But yeah, Nerva is going to try her luck, and let us hope it succeeds. And then of course Master Windu, yes, and his Jedi are still fighting against the Librarian, and I'm not sure how is it going to end in that contest between the Jedi and the Librarian. I did say I want them to retreat. I want the Jedi, all of them, to get out there as soon as possible, because they can't seem to win against this guy. And yeah, I don't want them to continue trying to fight this fight, because we might actually lose someone very important here. We might actually lose Mace Windu. We might actually lose Obi-Wan Kenobi. We might actually lose some also other very important Jedi that are facing up against the Librarian. So yeah, they have to get out there as soon as possible. Alright, let us continue with episode 27, Saint Lazarus. Is this Major Lazarus? Is he also becoming a saint? Like Saint Gaxian? Okay. People are becoming saints in this battle. 3, 2, 1, go. Episode 29. Oh no. What did I do? But here it says 27. I'm confused. I am confused. I think maybe I took the wrong one. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's AFanWithTooMuchTime's mistake. I don't know. Okay. Let's just continue. Let's just continue.
Sando felt his heart pounding painfully in his chest. He could not move. He could not think. The sheer terror of what he had nearly escaped chasing him like a phantom, unimpeded by the now sealed door. He barely had the time to draw in a couple more ragged breaths before he cried out in raw terror. The sudden scream torn out of him by the equally sudden appearance of the Imperial's blade. The glowing length of metal cut into and through the thick material of the door behind him, halting a foot from his face, the heat touching his skin even through his helmet. He rolled back and away as the sword began to slice upwards, beginning to carve a hole for its wielder. The clone hopped to his feet and scrambled down the corridor past the other clones who were setting up to defend the next choke point.
He scrambled? Is he running away? Okay, this is different. A clone trooper is actually running away. Huh.
Oi, Sando! Where are you going?
One of the men called to his back, but he did not stop or slow, even as the sounds of other explosions, the heavy, pressurized punch of breaching charges, began to sound off behind him. The blasting started, followed by screaming. And Sando did not need to turn around or slow to know that more than one of the Imperial death machines had broken into their perimeter. The loud, thundering thuds of their explosive weapons quaked the air around him, making it hard not to think about those terrible guns, and how helpless he would be if one sighted down his fleeing back and blew him apart.
Look at the art. I mean, look. I think this is a battle sister, right? I'm not entirely sure, but there's fire behind this Imperial soldier, so I think maybe it is a battle sister. And with a power sword, it seems like it. And yeah, the clone troops are just being destroyed here. They're just being destroyed. Oh.
He was one bend away from his destination when a sealed hatch 12 paces in front of him blew open in a sudden spray of sage smoke and gunpowder. Sando sped up, charging with all his might, but could not pass before an owl-faced Imperial warrior loomed tall in the broken doorway. The wide lenses of her mechanized helmet burned an intense green, and he could see clearly that she saw him and would reach for him. He leveled the Imperial death laser he still clutched in his arms, and sprayed red lances of light into those green eyes, making the woman scream through the loud speakers in her armor and reel away, thrashing with the mace she held. Sando dared hope that this would be enough, only to be thrown halfway down the hall by the sudden strike of the armored Imperial's flailing power maul. He groaned, stumbled up to his feet, and then fell again, dropping his gun. His left arm felt numbed by the grazing strike, and it was utterly unresponsive now, punishing his attempts to move with electrical jolts of pain. His whole left side felt thrashed, and his armor was cracked and shattered in several places, exposing the black bodysuit underneath. The clone grit his teeth and staggered upright, drawing a blaster pistol he had salvaged during their setup and defense, and continued his egress. Luckily, he found that the blow had tossed him down the way he had been planning to go and was soon at the room he sought.
Yeah, but is he following a plan or is he running away? Is he quitting the field? What's going on here?
He slid open the door, almost falling inside the large room where the explosives were being primed. But when he looked up, he found the demo clones splayed out across the ground, their limbs and bodies shattered like broken toys. And standing over the ruin of his men stood 5 towering women, all garbed in the same encompassing armor as the ones killing his men even now.
Man, these battle sisters mean business out here. Oh, how many of them are there?
They met his gaze and crouched, milliseconds away from a forward lunge when Sando snapped out his blaster. He managed to fire just faster than they could leap, his bolt sailing past them and into the demo charges which were heaped against the wall. The resulting explosion threw the clone back, tearing his gun out of his hands and ripping him away from the world of the waking for several moments. When he came to himself, he found that he could hear nothing and see little. Gray, wispy dust fell all around him, and he found himself half buried in detritus. He scrunched his sweat-laden face tightly as a terrible aching poured over him, molten and fresh. His entire body, particularly his left arm, was ringing like a painful dirge, making his attempts to rise blindingly agonizing. Not that there was much to see in the gray mire which surrounded him.
Kubik, well done. Look how intimidating they look. The battle sisters. The battle sisters with the green visor, things on their masks or their helmets. Yeah, the green lights. They really do look intimidating. Oh.
He somehow found his feet, and not a moment too soon, as he saw but could not hear the shifting nearby piles of metal debris. Out from them rose the armored form of the Imperials, still alive in spite of everything, and the sight of them kicked Sando back into alertness. He struggled and stumbled as he made his way past their reorienting forms, limping out of the dust and grit which hung around him. There was a loud, horrible ringing in his ears, like a metallic ping, which never ended or lost strength. Sando tried to ignore it as he made his way over the wreckage of the room, angling for where he knew the hole in the wall must be. But the ringing only grew louder and louder, developing into a chaotic cacophony of familiar noises which his scattered thoughts simply could not place in the panic of the moment. However, one of the noises was growing louder and louder than the others. A high-pitched, continuous whistling which made Sando pause his escape attempt. He knew that noise, and collapsed down to his knees the moment he recognized it for what it was. The whistling of falling mortar shells. The munitions impacted ahead of him in a volley of overlapping explosions, the shockwaves from it blowing away the thick dust and spraying the prone clone with wind and rain. The battlefield was revealed to him, the lip of the breach which led outside only 2 feet from where he crouched. Before him was the cracked but still intact bunker dome of the holdout they had been sent to clear. The prefabricated structure smoking and damaged from all the various weapons fire it had already absorbed. Yet, its sturdy construction remained in more or less one piece. And the Imperials within continued to lay down heavy lines of fire from the slits and gun ports which, to Sando's relief, faced away from the building and down towards the avenue they overlooked. From down there and other structures across from them, the vanguard forces were engaging the bunker and other Imperial forces which supported it. Casualties on both sides continued to mount without progress, at what was fast becoming a bottleneck, one which the entire main column would soon be forced into. But thoughts of the main column and the plight of the other clones were lost on Sando, who cursed through bruised lips and began crawling forward. He heard the crunching and stomping of the Imperials behind him, as they pulled themselves from the rubble and began to walk after him. His heart was beating in his throat, but a cold reality began to settle over him as he reached the back of the prefabricated bunker. He had nowhere to run, and couldn't even if he did. Leaning against the cracked, smoking wall, he turned himself around just as the menacing shapes of the warrior women of the Imperium came into full focus past the blankets of rain, eyes glowing in the torrents of wind and water.
It's time to make our last stand.
One put aside her odd and overly powerful slug thrower, drawing a straight, massive combat knife to finish him off. Sitting against the wall of their bunker, Sando understood the logic behind choosing a weapon which would not risk damaging their own structure further. But angled as he was, he could see something else as well. Above the battle sister and the weapon she raised high to end his life. The blade shattered under the pressure of a sudden blue bolt of energy. The sisters present wheeled about, shielding their lenses from the sudden rain of blaster fire which began to fall onto them. The roof access teams had begun to rappel down, their descent led by the venerated commandos of Delta Squad. There, Sando felt a burgeoning hope building inside of him as he watched two of the battle sisters fall onto the ground in writhing heaps and a third stagger. He had seen it all. The first sister to fall had taken 2 blaster shots into the face, one into each eye, courtesy of a red-painted commando wielding a sniper blaster. She now screamed through the speakers on her helmet, clawing like an animal at her eyes and helmet seals as she kicked and flailed. The second was also struggling on the ground as well, but not in pain, though her evident frustration was hardly the lesser of the two. It was with her and the third that Sando came to understand a weakness he had not known or seen before. Their joints. The creases in their armor where mobility was required were vulnerable to the heated plasma and charged ions of their blaster rifles. The second fallen sister and the third, which had been staggered, struggled against the weight of their own armor as they tried to react to the oncoming rush of clones. But their armors were not recovering quickly enough, and the hardened plates began to crack and warp under the persistent firepower of the many clone troopers. The 2 other women were quick to respond, screaming chants born on words of frenzy over their helmet speakers, laying into the exposed clones with their explosive firearms, aiming into the center of their mass to maximize how many would be struck by each lethal blast.
I'm afraid there's just too many. Too many clone troops.
He watched them sway and shift subtly, holding themselves in order to minimize the exposure of their black, vulnerable undersuits. Even so, though the clones were exposed and without cover, they were also arranged so that all of their considerable number could fire down into the Imperials as one, and the results took meager seconds to resolve. The Sisters of Battle fell as the clone commandos touched down, screaming for mercifully brief lengths of time as they were, one and all, rapidly cooked to death inside their own suits. Not one retreated, not one even attempted to escape their fate. And Sando saw it all. The leader of Delta Squad, a clone named Boss, came to Sando and hauled him up to his feet by his good arm. A clone in green paint named Fixer, quickly beginning to administer him Bacta via an advanced dispersal unit. He took a deep breath and took off his helmet, smiling as the rain poured over him and washed his face clean. Even as this went on, a clone in yellow paint by the name of Scorch began to strap charges to the wall Sando had been leaning on, humming happily as he did.
Come on,
said Boss. Sando blinked, mind spinning, feeling both fast and slow. He did not respond, but stumbled after Boss as he was pulled away.
Hey, come on, snip out of a trooper.
The clone commando said, hauling more urgently as he took Sando back into the building where most of the roof access teams were now taking shelter.
He's probably still going through some sort of shock, you know, after experiencing everything and almost being at the verge of death, and now you guys appear, you know, he must be still in a state of shock, I think.
The clone who was pulling along didn't seem to understand. Sando was still just processing the fact that he was alive and standing, still here, still part of the world around him. And the rush and then calm from that sudden Bacta infusion made everything feel surreal. His heart felt odd in his chest. His skin was both cold and warm in distressing alternation.
Boss, he's not taking the infusion well. He might be going into shock.
Said the green clone from somewhere.
What?
Said the one called Boss, before he took either side of his own helmet and pulled it from his head, the seals hissing in protest as he did.
Hey, look at me. Here, look at me. Breathe, brother. Slowly. Breathe.
He said to Sando. They were behind something now, the lip of a broken wall, rubble crunching beneath them as they and many other clones kneeled and hid from the blast they expected to come. Sando realized for the first time that he was hyperventilating and nodded numbly to Boss, trying to slow his breathing, recalling his training. 4 seconds, breathe. 4 seconds, hold. 4 seconds, release. 4 seconds, hold. 4 seconds, breathe.
What's your name?
Boss asked.
Sando.
Sando told him through trembling lips.
Good. Tell me, Sando, why they call you that?
Boss asked, helping center the clone. Sando could feel the feeling returning to his limbs, could feel the trembling he had not noticed receding. His mind began to work again, given something distinct to do, given questions he could answer.
Charges set and ready. Let me know when, boss.
Called the yellow-painted clone.
Blow him on a 3 count.
Boss yelled back. The yellow clone saluted and began to loudly and slowly count down as Sando began to answer.
It's from a Saiyan. We heard from Naboo.
The
From where? Naboo. Okay.
explosion detonated, a ball of fiery light ripping open the back of the Imperial hardpoint with a thundering roar. Its concussive force distorted the rain around it, and the sudden light illuminated even the deepest shadows. And it was in that sudden illumination that Sando saw the shape of his terror. He grabbed Boss's sidearm, and the clone commando, blaster in one hand, helmet in the other, was unable to stop him. But Sando had not gone mad, and his purpose was revealed almost as quickly as the shots he snapped off. The clones spun to face him and the object of his aggression, raising rifles as the tall form of another Imperial stalked out into the open, now dark hallway.
Look at this. Look at this. Oh, this is cool. Oh, this is nice.
She was shrouded in incense smoke, which poured like fountain waters from 2 floating censer skulls which hung suspended above her shoulders. The fearsome woman's armor was far more defined and ornate than that of the sisters the clones had already defeated, and was evidently far more powerful.
You must be dealing with another canoness or something. Yeah, like a very powerful battle sister.
The eye lenses of her helmet were smoking from the shots that Sando had put into them, and yet her armored face remained totally unharmed. She crushed rubble underfoot, grinding it to dust as she came closer. A halo of ominous light beginning to appear from over her ceramite shoulders. Sando could clearly see the emerald glow of many, many more eye lenses from many, many other sisters,
Scary.
following the wake of the first, shrouding the smoke-cloaked saint in an unholy green light. and with an ululating battle cry which trembled the steel around them, they poured out of the mouth of the hallway like flames from the jaws of a maddened dragon. And the clones began to burn.
I guess they're using fire to to cleanse the battlefield, because you know the Battle Sisters use a lot of fire, you know. So, oh. Oh, Sidious. Okay.
The Senate had come to its decision mere minutes before the news of the Second Battle of Axum reached the Republic capital world. The mere shock of it threatened to toss the entire legislative body of the Republic back into session. But this, Palpatine could not allow. While his proxies and puppets stalled the reeling senators, he sent his orders to the Republic fleet through channels and sources he knew would be receptive to not only his own vast authority, but the message he bore with it. Technically, he could no longer issue orders of such magnitude unilaterally, as he was no longer the, strictly speaking, Supreme Chancellor of the Republic.
He's just the Chancellor now.
Though he still held the title. Thanks to the workings of the Senate, Palpatine was now required to coordinate and agree with their newly designated Supreme Commander. A man who, at this very moment, was not even present on the world in question. And so he had sent them the only order he could issue that would be respected by most who saw it. Your Supreme Commander is fighting for his life on the planet of Axum. Go to him! Recover him and inform him of his new position, before we are forced to choose his replacement. The old Sith had sent.
Wait a minute, who are you sending this message to? The senators? You want them to go out there and save him? They're not gonna do anything. They're just gonna be sitting in the galactic legislature. They're gonna stay there. You know, they're going to stay on Coruscant. They'll probably be saying, no, we'll have to send an investigation committee out there, you know. So, yeah.
As a result, the Republic fleet was assembling even as the first of the motions to reconvene were received. With that taking place, the Supreme Chancellor had reduced the effort and political capital required to dismiss those motions to a trivial sum. Yet, even so, he went even farther. He would not just deny these motions, but make a physical statement and rally his Republic with a proper showing of force. He stood before a thick set of transparent steel windows and watched as the sky above and around the rising deck of his vessel became crowded with the silver and gray wedges of his gathering armada. Like gripless blades, the titanic dagger-like ships rose in masses which cast deep, jagged shadows across the silver surface of Coruscant. The mass of their martial numbers, compounded by the titanic forms of Republic Station tugs, each tailed by the even larger, bristling masses of the Golan defense platforms they were pulling into orbit. And around it all was the distant metallic haze of thousands upon thousands of fighters, bombers, boarding craft, crew carriers, and other, smaller support craft, moving between vessels and the surface of the planet like a frenzied cloud of countless irregular insects. The Supreme Chancellor stood aboard the bridge of his newly designated flagship, formerly known as the Glory of Coruscant before its extensive refits. Sidious had seen fit to give the ship a new name once it had emerged from the rings of Kuat and became his own. The Prosecutor sounded like a far more apt title by his own judgment, especially given his plans for the vessel. It was joined alongside her sister ships, the Call of Kuat and the Treasure of the Core, and the three massive vessels were further bolstered by the previously concealed strength of the Victory Fleet. Fully staffed and armed, loyal only to Sidious, and armed with the new, more warlike Victory-class Star Destroyers, the Victory Fleet, impressive though it was, formed only the tip of the spear, with various elements of the recalled sector fleets composing the rest of the Republic's massed armada.
Yeah, this all sounds very nice, that you have this big fleet and, with all of these fighter craft and everything. Yeah, it sounds all cool and nice, Supreme Chancellor. However, did you upgrade these vessels' weapon systems and shields? Are they going to be up to spec when they come up against an Imperium of Man, battle group? Because we remember what happened in the first battles between the Republic and the Imperium of Man. The Imperium of Man had the distance on their side, they had the firepower on their side. The ship's tonnage was also just dwarfing anything that the Galactic Republic could put on the field. So, yeah, you have nice ships, you have nice, fighter craft, but is this going to be enough? Is this really going to be enough? We'll have to just wait and see.
With this force, he would go to Axum and finally begin making progress after the setbacks forced onto his plan by these cursed new outsiders. And more than that, if his visions and premonitions proved true, then his departure would accomplish far more than what would be possible to perform at the location they would arrive at. Just the thought of the possibilities brought a hideous grin to his face. "Supreme Chancellor," said the subtle voice of Sly Moore. Palpatine did not turn right away, languishing within the glory of his power, feeling each ship, each clone, each war machine, as meeker men might feel their own hands and feet. And this was nothing, only his nascent power. The Umbarn awaited her master's whim, and after a long enough time, he gave it. "Proceed," he said without turning. "I have news for you, Supreme Chancellor. News that you intend to follow the fleet action to Axum has been leaked, as per your orders. The reactions are as expected, but the result will be determined, as you know, by the success of our actions on the field. And as you predicted, none of the Greater Senate have volunteered to do the same. All are choosing to remain on Coruscant."
As expected.
She said. "And Senator Amidala?" he asked into his reflection. "She has vanished. We currently do not know her whereabouts," she said.
I'm hoping she's with her children. She's not going to Axum anytime soon. She should stay with her children. I don't even know if they're born yet. So, please, Senator Amidala, don't do anything stupid. Please, stay home, have your children, stay with them, and you'll meet Anakin when it's possible, not now.
Smile lengthened. "Good. Is that all, Moore?" "No, there is one other thing. The tactician we were promised has arrived," she said. "And is the Prophet plan feasible?" asked the Supreme Chancellor. The pale Umbaran made a subtle gesture with her mostly concealed hand, activating projectors behind Sidious, which brought the plan before him to be inspected in clear, three-dimensional representation. The Dark Lord of the Galactic Republic slowly turned around, Sly Moore and most of the others on the bridge kneeling as he turned his regard, first to them and then to the plans. As his eyes scanned them, Sly began to speak from her kneeling position. "According to the Kaminoans, the clone crews will be able to comply with these new, advanced maneuvers. They are eager to display the proficiency of their newest batches. Additionally, while they are somewhat uncertain about the performance of the new Victory class, they have guaranteed the technical capacity behind the Acclamators and Venators will be more than enough to meet the plan's demands. Palpatine felt his smile firming, cutting across his face. Good, good. I am pleased, most pleased, said the Sith Lord. His eyes gleamed on the darkened bridge, alight with the wraith blue light of the projectors, and the deadly designs contained within. It was a beautiful plan, a scheme of simple, ruthless genius, and, just like the tactician who had brought it forth, it now belonged to him. It was time he properly revealed some aspect of his power to these arrogant outsiders, and teach them once more to fear the unknown.
Who is this tactician that Sidious has brought? I wonder. And Sidious, they're not going to fear the unknown. They burn the unknown. They destroy the unknown. These people don't fear anything. As long as the God Emperor is on their side, they will go to the ends of the universe to defeat their enemy. You are nothing. So, watch yourself. Check your pride and your arrogance on this matter. Because I'm still not really convinced your victory fleet is going to be powerful enough to face up against the Imperium of Man's, battle groups. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. All I know is that, I'm assuming it will take time for vessels to be upgraded with far more powerful weapons, far more powerful shields. And it hasn't been that long, since the Jedi with their clone troops attacked Axiom. It hasn't been that long. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
We are nearly there. It will be around this corner and likely guarded.
The Marine whispered as they crept down the way. How heavily guarded do you expect it to be? Anakin asked back, stalking the large, armless man's shadow, saber drawn, but deactivated. The Marine grinned. It would not be enough. Not now.
This prison, as you call it, has only 8 cells and is largely a secret to the entire ship. This hidden facility and its adjoining structures are the personal pet project of an Inquisitor, a powerful lord of the Imperium by the name of Wilder. Due to the nature of his constraints and secrecy, the facility is necessarily small, and thus less secure than they like.
Khayon said as he crept low, coming to kneel beside the bend in the hallway. Anakin nodded, remembering the encounter that had led him down here in the first place. Coming down behind the renegade, the Jedi edged to his right until he could also peek around the corner. He spoke as he did. The imps did seem anxious about you when I first met them, and couldn't wait to execute you, in fact, Anakin said. The Marine almost chuckled at that, but suppressed his reaction. A moment later, Anakin was able to see why, as he caught sight of the defenses which barred their path. 2 massive steel doors at the end of a narrow corridor, which started wide after the bend and then became smaller and tighter the closer they came to the doors. The space on the sloping walls was not left vacant either, with several servitors built into them and the ceiling, each one grotesquely fused with a large weapon emplacement, their dead, bloodshot eyes scanning for targets. They were arrayed to have clear firing lines past each other, a task made infinitely easier by the narrowing of the walls they were built into. Lastly, 2 masked women, not unlike the ones who had escorted him down here, stood sentinel before the doors, each one hefting a shield in one hand and sparking power maul in the other.
Okay, Sisters of Silence are here too. How are you guys going to deal with this?
I can hear 7 servitor turrets built into the walls.
Khayon said. Close. 9, actually, with some really, really big guns. Anakin corrected.
9. It would be 9. Okay, Skywalker. Do the turrets look integrated, linked in with each other?
The Marine asked. Anakin squinted down the hallway at them, trying to make sense of their grim construction. I'm not sure. How would I tell? Anakin asked him.
Look at the way they are scanning and moving. They should be able to coordinate their Overwatch targeting around each other without a cease in movement. It's, how would I explain it? It's in the barrels of the guns. They won't ever endanger each other with crossfire.
Anakin focused his eyes on those details, watching the black-armored droid men jutting from the stone walls, each mounted like a grisly display left out by some horror-vid hive of monsters. In spite of his revulsion, he did manage to notice what Khayon was speaking about, soon noting the unceasing pattern he had described and how it never endangered the other turrets. Yeah, I see it now. Yes, they appear to be integrated. I guess that means we won't be able to fool them into cross-firing on each other. Anakin said at length, Khayon responding with a soft, mirthless huff.
True. Integration in that way is normally a good thing, especially within the shroud of their anti-psyker morass. Our minds would be unable to touch their primitive, unprotected demi-thoughts. But that shroud is not so thick as it was.
Khayon elucidated. Do you think you could lift it? Now that I've reversed the polarity on those rods, you should be able to... Anakin started.
I can, but it's a strange power that I'm using now. These amplifiers will work for us, but I'm uncertain for how long.
Khayon admitted. Are you afraid they will switch back? Anakin asked, barely able to smother the dismay in his voice. Changing each of the rods into an amplifier had left him feeling completely drained, and he was less than certain he could even attempt that kind of thing twice. But Khayon shook his head.
No, not at all. I am actually wary of the opposite. When I push against the anti-psyker veil, it puts a lot of strain on me. Normally, I could bear it easily and heal later. But I am in a less than pristine state. I am not sure how long my body can withstand these forces,
said the Chaos Space Marine. So, in other words, Anakin began to say, you're not afraid that they will shut you down. You are afraid that they will burn you up, said Anakin. Khayon chafed at the wording, but nodded.
I fear nothing. But yes, that is more or less the gist of my concern. I will need to create a space again when we find my weapons. And it is for that task that I must conserve my strength. The longer I am strained here,
he led, the less chance we will be successful where it counts. Anakin concluded.
Precisely,
said Khayon.
Man, I like their work, teamwork here. No one is arguing, they're just, bouncing ideas off each other, they're talking, and it's So civil. You know, and yeah, it's good. It's good, really. You guys are going to be best of friends.
All right, then I'll do it, said Anakin.
What?
Asked Khayon. I'll lift it myself, Anakin asserted.
How?
Khayon asked, already knowing the answer. In response, Anakin reached up and took hold of one of Khayon's shoulder-mounted black stone rods. Like this. If these rods can amplify your power, they should be able to amplify mine. I'll lift it and hold the veil up. If I can do that, do you think you can incapacitate those defenses? Anakin asked. Khayon smiled inwardly.
I know I can. But you will only be using one rod. I have all 12. Whatever the strain to me might be, you will be dealing with worse.
The sorcerer cautioned. Anakin's face tightened, but just as the Chaos Space Marine had predicted, he did not shrink away from the task. I'm less roughed up than you are. I can take it, said the Jedi General. Khayon nodded, feigning reluctance. The Jedi had no idea what he was about to attempt, and soon he would expend all of his strength and force the sorcerer to take over him. Once that was done, they would be connected through the black stone rod, and Khayon would do what he needed to do. He would depart his ruined flesh and begin anew within the stolen body of this good-natured fool.
Really? Really? He can do that? Oh no. I guess this friendship is over.
It was a sour thing for Khayon to reward trust and alliance with treachery, but it was a far more sour thing to remain within the husk he had been reduced to, while under the tender care of his Imperial hosts. Ever since the moment he had felt Anakin manipulate the Blackstone, he'd known there could be no other way. Already the Jedi was flagging in his strength, and Khayon had no doubt that the man would feel pain once the moment was upon them.
I will honor his struggle. I will do what I can to forewarn his doomed republic.
He decided. He would do that much, at least.
Are you ready?
Khayon asked. Anakin nodded. Should I try to build up to it, or give it all I have all at once? He asked. Khayon thought for a moment.
Give it everything you have. You will need at least that much to lift the veil. Sustain that effort for as long as you can. It shall not take long for me to finish the work.
Said the sorcerer.
So I guess this is goodbye to Anakin. This is goodbye. Oh man. Okay. Okay.
Jedi Masters Mace Windu and Jarro braced as the now desperate Imperial charged in towards them like a speeder truck. Armor sparking around his disabled arm as the Marine whipped his empowered stave around his body, timing its rotation to the strike he would no doubt seek to deliver. The two masters extended their hands to seize him again, but this time with the librarian being aware of the two, the tactic did not work so well. Instead, their minds and wills met his own, cast out into the void between them in anticipation of this tactic. A brief mind war followed, Jarro and Mace's faces constricting in sudden, intense effort, time slowing and nearly stopping as the speed of bodies was replaced by the speed of thought. Their wills collided, and right away the Jedi moved to subdue the Imperial together. But the effort was for naught, for while two minds were ostensibly better than one, The brain they were attempting to grasp was lined with razors.
It's Saphran, guys. He's not just going to allow you to enter into his mind. This is a librarian who has fought hundreds of thousands of wars. He's just not going to allow you to get in there. But, you know, nice try. Let's see what else you guys can do.
Mace reached in for the thoughts of the attacking Marine and found himself in sudden quiet. 3 suns burning in an orange sky above him. All around him rose pillars of stone, reaching like buried fingers out from the sand around him. He was within an ancient half-buried arena, and he was bleeding. All the children corralled here were bleeding. They looked up at him, hollow eyes, hatred in every one. His hands hurt. They hurt horribly, a feeling echoed in many parts of his body. But he was hurting everywhere else because he had been struck everywhere else. His hands, however, did not hurt from being struck. They hurt from doing the striking. And the victims of it lay, breathless, strengthless, hateful, and afraid, all around him.
So these are Saphran's past memories, like when he was young. Probably being trained and inducted. Right? Yeah.
Well done, boy.
Said a voice that was like thunder. A shadow stood over him, tall as a mountain with glowing red eyes. An angel of death. It reached down, this thing of impossible size, shrinking itself, so that it could place something hard and warm in his blood, dirt-caked hands. A sun-baked blade, a bloody razor.
Now, finish it and be chosen. Cut your earthly bonds and ascend in the Emperor's name.
The mountainous angel commanded. The boy's hands were trembling, shaking, but then there was a sting on his neck, the bite of a needle from behind, and his sore muscles stilled. His pain receded somewhat, and his strength returned. He turned his eyes down, looking away from the angel and instead casting his sight upon the pathetic, dirty children all around him. In the past few months of training, they had become everything to him, and he had become one of them. An aspirant, a challenger, a destined child. They had struggled, starved, and worked together, completing challenges, overcoming other groups, and finally arriving here at this place.
There can only be one.
Here, he and his family of a dozen had been forced to fight, bare-handed, until only one could stand. And that one, the anointed one, was he.
A warrior of the Emperor has no family but our Heavenly Father and others who are chosen. They are not chosen.
The Titanic Marine told the boy.
You cannot ascend as long as they chain you here.
The boy who would be Saphran, the boy that was Mace Windu, nodded up at the Angel of Death. He raised the stained blade in both hands, letting it split the sun with its shadow. A shadow blacker than anything he'd ever seen, blacker than any sleep he'd ever had. And without further words, the boy began to cut.
Wait. No, we can't be done yet. Oh man, no. No. I've had too much time. No, this was too short. We needed more from that from that battle. But okay. Alright, Lazarus and Shadrik. Shadrik. Isn't he... Who was he again? Shadrik. I forgot. I forgot who Shadrik was again. But yeah, I think he was a commissar, right? Yeah. Okay.
Major Lazarus squinted his good eye as the hatch opened and took in the moist air. He felt like death itself, and not in a good way. Every single cell in his body was sick, adjusting less than well to the plethora of hastily applied cybernetics, drugs, and stimulants which had been used to keep him going. He'd been grateful for the time he'd been given to rest while with the Calambian Eagles, but his time with the Scions had ended abruptly, and before he'd even been able to properly thank them, they were gone, off to another objective. The rain he stepped into was starting to abate, but that still left his troops dripping and soaked to the bone. They stood before him, assembled in ranks, or as close to ranks as they could manage. Decimated, but victorious and alive, though only barely. Cadians, Calambians, Kriegers, Vestellans, Tech Priests, Abhumans, and the shards of what remained from those regiments that had been sent to aid Lazarus stood intermingled, grouped where they could do so easily, but otherwise unable to find the energy for the effort.
Major Lazarus, the unifier of the different forces of the Imperium of Man. Major Lazarus, the tactician. Major Lazarus, the leader that will pull you out of death, you know, who will give you an impossible victory. This man should have died. He should have died many times, but he's here. I don't know whether it's luck or is it the God Emperor protecting him, but yeah, I'm impressed by Major Lazarus. He's not one of my favorite characters, but I do recognize his abilities, definitely. He's a good commander.
Saw a one-armed Calambian sniper slumping under the weight of his tall, pristine sniper rifle. He saw a young, unmasked Krieger leaning against a Cadian woman, her worn, dirty face streaked by bloody black hair. He saw a trio of enormous Bulgrins, all bleeding from wounds of various sizes, yet concerned only for the figure the three held between them. The massive men were all weeping silently, trying to stifle their sorrows as they cradled the mangled body of their commissar, the dead man seeming childlike in their massive hands. The sight of them, all of them, straightened Lazarus' spine and hardened what failing metal the man had left. He had no right to stand before them with a slouch, no right at all. At his side was the sister of battle who had accompanied the penitent engine, the least scathed of them all, yet bearing her own notable damage, most of which she had sustained during the descent from the park. He knew not if she felt the same way he did, or simply had enough faith and vitality contained in her armor to hold her up even now. But she strode with a surety and purpose which made it seem as though, to her, nothing was amiss. He wished he could have that faith, as he stood before his soldiers and snapped around to face their same direction, waiting. They stood inside the smoking walls of the basilica, at last returned from whence their mission began. In spite of this, Lazarus had the creeping suspicion that their work was far from done. Still, he closed his eyes as much as he could and listened. While the sound of distant battle marred the air from afar, there were noises which were blessedly absent from the cacophony. No more artillery fire fell on the base, and that, he knew, was because of them. His eyes snapped open as the large gates before them creaked and swung wide, watching as the commissar captain stepped through, surrounded by a large cadre of guards and the buzzing crowd of his war staff. The unofficial major swallowed hard as he watched the red and black-garbed man approach, an air of authority whirling about him, akin to a tyrannical storm which he wore like a vestment of his office. If Lazarus could have stood any straighter, he would have. Sergeant Lazarus, Commissar Shadrik said as he approached.
Oh, so Shadrik doesn't recognize him as a major. Oh, yes. Who was it again? Oh my gosh, I forgot the sister who, promoted Lazarus to a major. And Shadrik hated that battle sister, and he actually celebrated when she died. And yeah, so anything that she had started, he's going to be the one to try and destroy it. Shadrik, I mean. And yeah, Shadrik is also, trying to climb up this ladder of ambition from all of this chaos. And I remember I didn't like the guy, right? Yes, I didn't like the guy. Definitely. Sister Julia, yes, her. She is the one who promoted Major Lazarus, to his position as a major. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm just, remembering everything from the past episodes.
Lazarus snapped a proper salute, nearly averting his eyes as they met the hard spheres of his superior. Already the man had made a point of re-establishing Lazarus' standard rank, something which both terrified and relieved the man. Yes, sir, he said. I've received a briefing on what happened. You will be debriefed at a later date and receive your punitive hearing afterward, the commissar said. Yes, sir, Lazarus responded. There was no other answer to give. Punitive hearing? Asked the sister standing beside Lazarus. Why would he be subject to such a thing?
Because he hates him. He hates how he got to that position. He hates the person who gave him the promotion. So anything that Sister Julia done, he wants to tear it down.
Accomplished our objective, as you can see. We can stand here and converse in the open only because of his efforts, she added. The commissar glared down his nose at the woman, but did not respond to her, instead continuing. Captain Velix will take command from here. For the time being, you are to return to your squad and resume your sanctioned duties. The commissar looked to his left and waved forward a prim female officer from his cadre, who saluted and then took her place beside Lazarus, effectively replacing him as she saluted. A plethora of bizarre emotions wormed through the Colombian man in those moments, and he faltered, remaining stiff in response. Is that clear, Sergeant? Shadrik asked a moment later. Sir, yes, sir! Lazarus snapped off, though before he could turn to do as ordered, the sister beside him interjected again. Are you hard of hearing, Commissar? I am certainly hard on those who make me repeat myself, she said. At this, the Commissar did turn to regard the woman, eyes narrowing in his thin, sharp skull. And you are? He asked. Sister Superior and Legatine Novitiate, Lorraine Zara Syed, she said. Lazarus felt his eye bulge in his skull. A Legatine Novitiate! He had snapped orders at a Legatine Novitiate? His subtle desire to step back into his old rank and vanish into the guard tripled in that moment, and he felt a cold corpse sweat start to stain his skin. Looking between the fanatic and the commissar, and wondering which one of them would kill him first if he could not make good his getaway.
Don't worry, the sister won't hurt you. She knows your value. She understands what you have done, and she was on the battlefield. She knows everything. She's with you.
Shadrik raised an eyebrow, affecting a mildly impressed expression at the discovery, while the sister continued to glare through the lenses of her power armor. He acted in a capacity far outside of his rank. It's as simple as that, he said. He acted in accordance with the will of Sister Rajulia, the Sister Superior said. The Sister Palatine does not have the power to enforce her will on the Astra Militarum, the Commissar retorted smoothly.
Get out of here.
And all of these soldiers are aware of that. There may be unusual clemency granted in light of these equally unusual circumstances, but that will be decided by myself and other officers involved at the hearing, which will take place in the future. Not here, and not now. Here and now, I need these soldiers ready to go to the front. Lazarus felt a pit open in his stomach. To the front? As in, the front line. He looked back at the soldiers behind him, half already beginning to look horrified as the overheard conversation sank in. That is absurd, said the sister, voicing the dissent within his own thoughts. Major Lazarus and his men have just returned from a taxing mission in which all of their cunning and force was required to attain victory. You cannot reward that by throwing their lives back into the furnace so quickly.
I like the fact that she said Major Lazarus. Yes. That's very important. That's very important. Lazarus, you have very powerful people supporting your position, man. Don't worry. Okay, you have people here with you.
These soldiers need food. They need rest. Sister Lorraine shifted her grip on the enormous bolter she still held, voicing several curses worth of agitation by the gesture alone. The Commissar seemed unimpressed. Sergeant Lazarus and these soldiers need to get back in line and prepare to do their duty. And you, sister, need to get back in your chapel and cease this interference. I don't care if you're the Emperor-blessed Canoness herself. This is my command. These are my soldiers. And my decisions are not up for discussion. Begone from here. We've no more business. Lazarus, what are you still doing here? Back in line. Shadrik snapped, his voice never rising past a certain octave. I will not! Major Lazarus, remain where you are! The Sister Superior spat. Lazarus felt his legs jerk, but he remained rooted to the spot, unsure of whom he'd be more terrified to disobey. That, more than anything else, shook the Commissar, whose calm face broke into a scowl. His arm hitched up, his hand landing unsubtly on the grip of his own bolt pistol, and the sister audibly scoffed through her helmet.
Are you guys gonna fight? Yes. Kill him. Kill Shadrik. Come on, sister, do it. I can't believe I'm calling for the death of someone. But, yeah, okay.
Draw that at your own peril. I am not one of your guardsmen, to be discarded at your leisure. Fire upon me, and it will be the very last thing that you do, Commissar Captain, she warned, not even bothering to lift her own weapon. If I choose to open fire on you, I will not do so alone. The Commissar shot back, giving a short nod.
And do you think that everyone else are just going to watch it happen? I can assure you, everyone is with the sister here, not with you, Commissar, and your cadre. You know, everyone is with the Sister of Battle, the Sister Superior, and with Major Lazarus. So if you shoot at the Sister Superior, I can assure you, everyone else who's there, who's watching this happen, they're gonna shoot at you. So yeah.
In response, the cadre of guardsmen around him drew their weapons and sighted the sister down on their scopes. This time, a grin cracked across Shadrik's face, though only a subtle one, and the sister did not scoff again, knees bending slightly as she took a half-step back, weapons still aimed down. Then, a distant bell high atop the tower began to toll, and the Commissar's face wrinkled into a hideous scowl. Stand down! These men will submit to my will. As I said, I do not care if the canoness herself attempts to intervene. This is your final warning, Sister Superior. There will not be another, he said. I will not stand down. These men deserve better, all of them, and I'm going to make sure they get better, she growled. Lazarus became aware of another large force entering through the front gates of the basilica not far away, but refocused his attention on the deteriorating situation before him, nerves fraying, standing rigid as a gravestone. The sister's feet groaned softly against the rockcrete floor, and the commissar's hand tightened fully around his weapon, his thumb unclipping it. Then you have chosen to... Commissar Shadrik began to say, the grip tightening on his gun. Commissar, wait! Please, this has risen far out of hand. Lazarus began to interject, but when he was interrupted, it was not with a vocal retort. Faster than even the sister could catch with her auto-sense-assisted helmet, Commissar Captain Shadrik smoothly drew his bolt gun and fired it into Sergeant Lazarus's gut. The bolt struck his carapace armor and was halted, knocking all of the breath out of the man before detonating and shattering the struck plate utterly.
This is how he dies? At the hands of this idiot? After everything, this is how he dies. Yo, Shadrik, you idiot. Do you know how valuable people like this are to the Imperium of Man? And you just... Yeah. Okay.
Roar and shrapnel sprayed as Lazarus was thrown off his feet and onto his back, eyes blank, staring up without blinking. More weapons were raised, though, to Shadrik's shock and subsequent dismay, it was not the sister's gun which rose first, though it did raise quickly. Nearly as one, the assorted, haggard soldiers raised their weapons, from the one-armed sniper to the two wounded guardsmen, each leaning on the other, and even the three Bulgrins, who understood aimed guns well enough to follow who the enemy was, raised their gigantic shotguns.
Shoot him. Shoot him now.
Flat-barreled ripper guns, slick las guns, and countless ballistic weapons yawned before the commissar and his cadre, their 30-plus guns suddenly dwarfed by thousands of firearms. A single-armed Cadian medic scrambled forward, working with the aid of another soldier to staunch the bleeding in the former major's chest as the commissar, Sister Superior, and surrounding warriors were drawn into a brittle standoff. This is... Shadrik began to hiss, only to be cut off by the Sister Superior. Measure your next words very carefully, Commissar, she warned, a divine ceramite statue, the maw of her bolt gun aimed directly at his chest. Accuse a daughter of the Emperor at your own peril. He grit his teeth, veins pulsing in his head under his tall cap. You cannot win this, he hissed. Neither can you, she...
You are the biggest idiot here, Shadrik. You are the biggest idiot. I want you dead. I want Tarweiler to be dead. You two are the biggest idiots. Major Lazarus. So is this how you become a saint? Oh gosh.
Shot back. And soon they were not alone. In only a short time, both forces found themselves surrounded by a third player. New, more numerous weapons raised inwards towards the commissar, his men, and those opposing them. The Sister Superior was the first to drop her aim back down to the ground. Lower your weapons! She called to the army at her back, and, hesitantly, they did. The commissar's soldiers looked around nervously, but held still as statues, keeping their aim trained on the initial rebels, fearful of what would happen if they swung to aim their guns at the encircling force.
How dare you call them rebels? Not you, AFanWithTooMuchTime. I mean these cadre soldiers that belong to Shadrik. They are not rebels. You people are the rebels. Following this idiot of a man. Ugh.
An ocean of steel masks surrounded them, all cast in the face of the Lady Dominica. Metal teeth clenched in perpetual expressions of divine hatred. The women wearing them bore lasguns, autoguns, and many, many hefted lit flamers. Over them, standing taller than their sisters, were the true members of the Adeptus Sororitas, clad in their power armor and shouldering monstrous bolter weapons, and even larger implements of flame and death. Though the hordes of novitiates wore little more than flak armor over sackcloth garments, even they had masks lined in silver and gold.
Who is coming here now? Like, wow, such a procession.
The true sisters bore the colors too, though with the addition of red as well. Blood red, divine gold, and metallic silver, the colors of the divine cohort. The colors of the Canoness Superior of the Order of the Emperor's Bride. Shadrik scowled and lowered his weapon, his men following suit. If Sister Palatine Rejulia had been a thorn in his side, then the Canoness was a sword poised over his head. She revealed herself soon enough, the crowd splitting to show her enthroned form, flanked by her advisors and guarded by her two daughters, both legatine legends of their order. They wore their full panoply of war, but not the Canoness herself. Nearly 400 years old, she was a withered figure, wrapped in white robes with gold trim and wearing a serene mask bearing the Emperor's own face, eyes closed, as if asleep, but only barely. The elder was seated on an enormous pyramidal palanquin, her body cradled in an audacious throne of solid platinum. Inscribed upon the throne were many words, each artistically rendered into its grand design, formed mostly into the shapes of bones, skulls, and swords. Faith, duty, honor, law, victory, and wrath. These words, among others, were predominantly displayed on the gargantuan seat, and the symbolism was not lost on Shadrik. Beneath the throne labored 22 criminals and heretics, most in various stages of roboticization, each struggling with all their might to keep the huge construct aloft over their heads. Above them, the throne itself was so large as to dwarf the women sitting within it. The Canoness only able to reach and lean upon one handrest at a time. The chair was a symbolic representation of the Emperor's authority, her mask a symbol denoting her as worthy of wielding it. It crushed the heretical and the unworthy beneath it, even as it elevated those who embodied its substance. Before it, the soldiers of Lazarus' legion began to kneel, one by one, and then 10 by 10. And then, even Shadrik's own men began to kneel, bowing their heads. Shadrik was their commander, but the Canoness was, to many present, the heart of their faith in the Imperial Creed. And while the commissar hated to admit it, her presence was an undeniably staggering one. How could one look so frail, and yet so unbearably powerful? Her advisors fell silent, watching from the sides of the throne as they were brought closer. The twin legatine sisters walking alongside it, sparking blue power swords drawn, jump packs flaring. Bright orange eyes peered at him from between the seams of the Emperor's closed eyelids, and soon a voice called out to accompany the hidden stare, carried through the air on subtle but powerful audio howlers. "Commissar Shadrik," she said, her voice frail yet sharp, like a crystalline sword. He expected her to question him, to demand an explanation, to seek an understanding. She did not.
Why isn't he kneeling? I hear everyone else kneeling, but I don't hear Shadrik kneeling. This man, not only is he disrespectful, but he's an idiot.
"Kneel," she ordered. There was no compromise in her voice, no maneuver, no guile. She had just given him an order, and, slowly, Shadrik realized that he dare not disobey it. Trembling with rage and pacified adrenaline, the man swept his cloak out and kneeled before the palanquin. He
On all fours. I want you kneeling on all fours.
expected her next words to come soon after. They did not. Instead, he heard a sound he did not understand at first, and once he did, it took all his might not to look up and gawk. The sound was the soft, rhythmic tapping of light, old feet slapping against metal, and soon he felt a long, thin shadow fall over him. And Commissar Shadrik knew she had descended her throne and now stood over him. Sweat trickled into his collar, and fear joined the other emotions swimming in his mind. He had been unaware that she could even walk, at least without assistance. Ravaged by age and centuries of battle, he had not heard of her descending her throne in public for decades. The novelty of the act was the truly frightening aspect of it. What did she intend to do? A withered hand came into view, bejeweled in various rings and items that seemed like rings. After a pause, he took the hand gently and kissed it, the act forcing onto Shadrik the full realization of how little his military command meant here and now. This was not his castle, it was hers, and she was not queen of this place, she was empress of it. Her hand pulled away after a moment and fell onto his shoulder, a pressure pressing down on him as the canoness lowered her masked face so she could speak into his ear. "Confess," she whispered. "Confess, and I will be merciful." Shadrik's blood ran cold. What was she speaking of? What did she know?
Hopefully that merciful act is going to be a mercy kill or something. You know, he's gotta die.
Dragged in a shuddering, tremulous breath, gathering himself. She knew nothing. If she did, she would not be waiting for a confession. That fact in mind, he looked up, meeting her hidden orange eyes, and lied. "I have nothing to confess, Canoness," he said in a low voice. She stared at him, neither nodding nor looking away, her eyes fixed on his in a way which made the commissar regret his decision to meet them. But that contact was broken by the intrusion of a third party. "Canoness!" The cry came from the ground, from the one-armed Cadian medic who was, even then, attempting to tend to Lazarus. "Canoness, I cannot save him! This man saved our lives! He brought the Imperium victory where we could only expect defeat! He deserves to live!" she pleaded. The holy lady of the sisters turned her mask to regard Sister Lorraine, and she nodded, speaking a moment after. "It is true. Had we air support or artillery, even dedicated reconnaissance, the battle would not have been swayed against us. But when it did, it was Major Lazarus who swayed it back. He acted far above any capacity that could have been expected of him. Rajulia saw the will of the Emperor when she chose him to lead," she said. The elder woman, all wrapped in white, nodded and strode past the commissar, leaving him forgotten and kneeling in her wake. She knelt down beside the dying form of the sergeant-major and stroked her hand over his face. No, he was not dying. He was already dead.
Damn it.
Can you save him? Asked the medic.
How?
His duty is ended, said the canoness. He has gone to the Emperor's side. However, she added, she drew back her hands and carefully began to remove her jewelry, taking off each ring carefully and setting it aside upon the ground. Once her hands, old and thin and withered, were bare, she hiked up her sleeves, revealing the ravages of her age in the pale flesh there. Skin once filled with vital muscles was now loose and wrinkled. Calluses hung suspended in her hands, and bones could be seen in the remaining shape that was left to her. Those old hands moved down over the former major's face and chest, moving without a tremble, and with such grace and precision as to remind the watchful that, old as she had been and remained an instrument of the Emperor's wrath. Her thin fingers reached the gore and pooling blood of his stomach, and sank into it, red grime speckled with shards of ceramite frothing forth from the act. And then there was light. A golden radiance filled the air around the canoness like a floating mantle of starfire, moving in the space around her like a fiery ribbon suspended within water.
Is she healing him? Is she like resurrecting him from the dead? Whoa. I know they can heal themselves, and they can heal and repair their own bodies. I have just never heard of them actually doing it to another person. Wow. She's giving him back life.
It wound around her gradually, making its way down into the lifeless man beneath her hands. His body jerked, and Lazarus suddenly found focus in his eyes, gasping and then screaming on the ground, arms and legs twitching wildly. She did not stop, forcing more of the light into him, slowly removing her red-smeared hands until finally she was clear of his body, and the light ceased to shine. Like a prisoner released from electrocution, Lazarus fell limp, panting raggedly, confused, yet alive.
You're back.
The soldier beneath them reached out blindly, and she took his large, gloved hand in her own bony fingers, squeezing his hard enough to get his attention. He gazed up at her masked face in open awe as she began to speak and to stand. Rise again, worthy servant of the Emperor. Our Lord and Master will not have you come before his final war on such disgraceful wings. I give you back not your life, but your death. I hope it will be better spent this time. Now, return to your place, Major. I will have use for you in the defense of my basilica. And then, as if what they had all seen was not enough, she pulled tight on his arm and helped him rise to his feet. A sight which beggared reality nearly as much as her denial of Lazarus' death had. She then extended a red hand towards one of her daughters, who came forward quickly, gently taking her mother's arm and supporting the woman. Doing so just in time, the canoness slumping against her as though she had narrowly avoided a collapse. Cheers and prayers began to fill the air then, each one a call of outright mockery in the mind of the humiliated commissar.
And you know, Tarweiler wants this institutional knowledge, this power, you know, to be destroyed as a sacrificial lamb for his mission to make the Imperium of Man in this galaxy stronger and better. He wants people like the Canoness Superior and her knowledge and her expertise, and people like Major Lazarus, you know, to die on this planet for his own ambitions. He's prepared to throw away people like this for his own ambitions. Tarweiler. And then now you have a person like Shadrik here, who's also just shooting people who are so important to the war effort, because he wants to get an upper hand on someone who is already dead. Rogelia is no longer here, but you're shooting people just because they were given a position by a Sister Rogelia. Are you mad? Are you mad? Hey.
Who still, even then, knelt where he had been placed, his earlier bluff reduced to ashes in his mouth. In spite of the new noise, he could still make out the Canoness's voice, loud and strong just moments before, now sounding haggard and weak.
Take me back to my throne.
She breathed to her daughter.
Yes, mother,
said the towering, armored Sister Legatine, aiding her Canoness in ascending the steps once more. But as they passed Commissar Shadrik's kneeling form, the Holy Elder spoke once more. Just loud enough for both her and the Commissar to know he had heard.
You fucked up.
Commissar, Captain, you are dismissed. Make preparations and leave my basilica at once.
I still want him dead, but this is okay too. I'll accept this too. Yes, I enjoyed that.
From our birth we knew the light. I was raised knowing I'd balance faith and might. Not once now have I doubted, and not once have I left your sight. I feel your strength always by me, guiding my fight. Oh, I am but a voice of the choir, singing a hymn that will decry their heresy. So wash me in fire, let me be the bar, the purging flame that cleanses the world anew. So pause your shaking hands, hold your doubtful thoughts. When faith is placed in something bigger than us, no longer a god, no one is but a part, united as a whole to sustain his wrath. We shall not forget the place from whence we came, blinded by the false light and walked on paths astray in the rain of blood, where our hearts, our bows were made unto the grace of the saints. When then you were slain, now we are warring for the faith, spreading light throughout the dark. To the outsiders we provide our burning grace. Though the others fear the flame, I will cherish its embrace. I will take the pain in stride when our resolve collides. As these monsters defile our homes,
Yes, guys, yes, that is it with Star Wars versus Warhammer 40K, episode 27 or 29, I'm not sure, because on the video it said 29. Saint Lazarus, made on AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. Wow, this was good. This was really, really good. Let me talk about the last one, because really I was enjoying the last one. Shadrik, one of the biggest idiots in this, in this series. One of the biggest idiots. Him and Tarweiler, they're like this. They are together. I just can't understand people who do stuff like this, you know. This is like self-sabotage. Someone who is so important, so pivotal in the continuation of the war effort. You kill him. What madness is that? Shadrik, really. And of course, with the Canoness Superior coming in there in her amazing procession, you know, with her Sisters of Battle and everyone else that was there, and the pyramid throne, and with the, how many people? 28 people who are carrying this thing. That was amazing, really. You know, that was truly amazing. And her healing abilities, or her, well, I wouldn't necessarily call this healing. Like, she literally resurrected Lazarus, you know, from the dead. So yeah, definitely, that was amazing. That's a power that's just really, the Imperium of Man is lucky to have someone like her, you know, with her expertise, with her skill, with her knowledge, with her experience on their side, you know, really. And Weiler wants people like this to be gone. He's prepared to sacrifice people who can do this for his own ambitions. It's madness, really. It's just madness. I still prefer Shadrik to be killed, to be dead on the floor, but, you know, having him being kicked out, it's also okay, I guess. Hopefully the clone troopers can, you know, kill him and his cadre as he's out there in the wilderness. I don't know. And, you know, how the Sister Superior and everyone else were defending Lazarus, you know, even when he was shot in the stomach, they still took out their guns. They were ready to kill this man. They were ready to kill this man. I love that. I love that. You know, they knew the worth of Major Lazarus. They knew what this man did for them. They were there in the trenches. It was him who led them to many victories, but also an escape that seemed impossible. It seemed impossible. If it wasn't for his leadership, they wouldn't have made it. All of these different sectors of the Imperium of Man, all of these different groupings, you know, all unified under his leadership. And they made it. Only for him to be shot by some idiot. Yes. That made me so angry. So very angry. And yeah, like I said before, I like how the Sister Superior was coming to his defense, really. And when she spoke about Sister Rujulia's decision on making Major Lazarus into a Major, you know, I also got a bit teary there, because I remember that part. I remember how it all started. And yeah, thank you, Sister Rujulia, wherever you are near the Empress side. Thank you very much. You know, you did something here. You really did something here. Your faith was not misplaced. You know, your faith really brought the strongest, candidate to lead different forces of the Imperium of Man into a victory and into a perfect, well, yeah, I would say a perfect withdrawal from the battlefields. So definitely, you did a good job, choosing Major Lazarus. I don't remember if it was Like if she just chose him randomly, or was he the first person to respond to her question about what are you guys doing here? Why aren't you guys out in the battlefield? Making sure that the enemy doesn't attack, the forward operating bases. I can't remember that part, whether she just chose him randomly or did he come forward to explain his side of the story about, why aren't they in the front lines. But definitely, when she decided to promote him as a major, really, she did a good job there. She did a very good job. And I'm sure, like I said before, wherever she is in the afterlife, near the Empress side, she's smiling. She's smiling. She sees Shadrik and she's probably laughing at Shadrik and just waiting for him to die, just like me. I'm waiting for this guy to die. We don't need people like this in the Imperium of Man. We already have a lot on our plate as it is, We don't need people like him. We don't need people like Tarweiler. He also has to go. Okay, I think that's out of my system now. In the beginning we had Sando, and he's trying to survive this battle, trying to make sure that he gets out, trying to kill as many of the Sisters of Battle as he can, and then there was the clone troop commandos who were also there saving him in the last second. Boss, Fixer, Scorch, all commencing their operations, and that battle is still going to continue. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Iskander is going to portray Anakin's naivety and friendship, and he's probably going to assume direct control of Anakin Skywalker's body. That's a very serious situation that might come into fruition. I don't know how is it all going to occur. I don't know when is it going to occur, I should say. But whenever it does, may the best man win over Anakin Skywalker's body. Yeah, okay. The Supreme Chancellor is also heading over to Axum with a large fleet of vessels and armies and fighter craft. Okay, go there. Let's see what happens. But if you haven't upgraded these vessels to able to, compete with the Imperium of Man, then you're just going to send a lot of people to their deaths, and you're going to fail at this mission. So hopefully, Sidious has upgraded his fleet and will be able to take on the Imperium of Man, vessels. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see with that. And then there was also, yes, there's a tactician. Who is this tactician that the Supreme Chancellor has brought aboard his vessel? I'm just wondering about that. Yeah. Oh yes, and then of course Mace Windu and him and another Jedi. I forgot the Jedi's name right now. They're trying to probe Saphran's mind. They are witnessing, his past memories, like when he was a child. Training to become part of, the Astartes, and yeah, really, it's a bloody affair. You have your supposed family of young people around you, all fighting for this one opportunity, and then you have to turn around and kill those people who you'd consider family. You have to cut those ties, you have to cut those chains, and be part of this brotherhood that serves the Emperor. So yeah, that's it's terrible. It is terrible. Oof. But this was a nice episode. This was very, very nice. I don't know whether it's episode 27 or 29. AFanWithTooMuchTime, you can tell us in the comment section. But really, I enjoyed this. I really did enjoy this, especially towards the end. Saint Lazarus. It was good. Okay guys, that is it. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. Oh yes, and Kubik, yes, well done on the images that you're showing of the Sisters of Battle and the clone troops, fighting amongst each other. Yeah, those images were cool. perfect. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And I will see you guys next week. Okay? Bye-bye.